take out your Bible and turn to John 18. John 18. The notes are inside your bulletin if you want to use them. Write down a few things. Verse 12. Find verse 12 in your notes, in your Bible. I want to just make a couple of comments and then I will read the text. We move from Jesus stepping forward, which is what was going on in our last message. Jesus literally stepped forward when everyone else was stepping back, and the disciples ran away. In the story today, Peter steps back. The contrast is dramatic, for literary purposes certainly. Jesus is in the midst of bogus questioning, conflicted witnesses, according to Mark 14, and as the quickly assembled trial violates their own rules to get a verdict that is wrong-headed and manipulated, Jesus steps forward and Peter steps back. Jesus is not fazed by any of it, and his responses affirm that he is the Son of God. And John takes this moment to weave two stories together, like a rope. Story of Jesus on trial in this bogus nonsense setting, and Peter kind of hovering in the shadows in the background, doing his thing and taking care of himself. It's kind of an interesting little thing. If we could ask Peter, just for a moment, what was the biggest mistake you ever made in your life? We suppose he'd say. That story of John 18, wish it hadn't really taken place, but it did. That might be the worst moment of his life. So we're going to touch on that just for a few minutes today. Peter followed the party into Jerusalem, but little did he know that he was about to do something that he never thought he would ever do. He told Jesus, I don't care what happens with all these other guys, I'm with you. And literally, probably 2 hours later, I'm out of here. I don't even know that guy. Okay? So, chapter 18, verse 12, if you found it, please stand with me and I'll read to verse 27. So the band of soldiers and their captain and officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him, first to let him to Annas, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. It was Caiaphas who had advised the Jews that it would be expedient that one man should die for the people. Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple, since that disciple was known to the high priest. He entered with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest, but Peter stood outside the door. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the servant girl, who kept watch at the door, and brought Peter in. The servant girl at the door said to Peter, "You also are not one of this man's disciples, are you?" He said, "I am not." Now the servants and the officers had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing and warming themselves. Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself. The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Jesus answered him, "I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where all Jews come together, and I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. They know what I said." When he had said these things, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand, saying, "Is that how you answer the high priest?" Jesus answered him, "If what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, why did you strike me?" Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. They said to him, "You also are not one of the disciples, are you?" He denied it and said, "I am not." One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter cut off, asked, "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" Peter again denied it. Then at once a rooster crowed. Father, as we turn our hearts and minds to this text, open them to John juxtaposes two stories, and you can tell they're really little brief vignettes. He speaks to Jesus' arrests in the garden, and they held him off to Annas. And then he speaks to Peter, his first denial at the gate, where the high priest, where the Annas is questioning Jesus, and then he goes back to the story of Peter and about the fireside and so forth, and then finally Jesus gets struck. So he kind of weaves those two things together, jumping from one story to the other story and back. And nowhere in John's story does we learn about, I think it's in Luke, where Peter says, I don't know him, for the third time, and his eyes catch Jesus. He doesn't comment on that. So something's going on. I mean, there's a whole lot more to the story, but John only tells this part of the story. So I want to weave some things together for a few minutes. The trial of Jesus began with an informal inquiry by Annas. That's found in verse 13 and verse 17, verse 24. First, they led him to Annas, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. And then verse 24, look down at verse 24 for a moment. Now Simon Peter was standing, pardon me, verse 24. Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. So, what's going on right there? Jesus' Jewish trial is a short part of John's narrative. It's probably the shortest narrative of the Jewish trial as there is in the four Gospels. He tells a very short piece to it. As a matter of fact, he doesn't tell a thing about his trial in front of Caiaphas. He only tells about what's going on in front of Annas. And I think that the reason why is he wants to focus on what happened with Peter. That's the essential part of this, and that's why I called the message Peter's Denial. So let's first start in verse 12 to 14. We're going to walk through these verses together. The Greek text uses the word chiliarchos to identify the leader of the Roman troops. Let me quickly give you the outline from last week before we jump in there. We did the arrest last week, and this week is the denial, Peter's denial. That's the focus of John's little section right here. And then we just go down to the verdict, which is next week, and then crucifixion and finally the death and burial. So that's where we're at this morning. We move from Jesus stepping forward to Peter's stepping backward. And I think that's what John's trying to get us to see. What would I do if I was in this circumstance? What would any of us do? Now, okay, Peter did not have the Holy Spirit, but he did live with Jesus for 3.5 years. And we'll get back to that in a few moments. The guy who arrested Jesus is a Roman captain. And that word captain right there means somebody who's in charge of 1,000 men. Now, we talked about that last week. Very unlikely 1,000 men came to the Garden of Gethsemane. Maybe 200. So he arrests Jesus, and then there's this little piece at the end where they bind him. He's bound. Look there just for a moment. Verse 12. And their captain, that's the guy, that's the chiliarchos character, that's the Greek word, which means I'm in charge of 1,000 men. And the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. They tied him up with some kind of a restraint. So that means that somebody physically grabbed Jesus. And, like I said, thought he was a flight risk or something. We need to make sure this guy's going off. So, this is what's going on in the story right here. He was unjustly bound so that we could be graciously freed. That just comes out of the text for me. Think about this for a minute. Why would God, in any form, let some mere creature tie him up? He could have disappeared. He could have done whatever he wanted to. He could have, if Samson could break twine, anything Jesus could do. It would have been easy to step out of the scene, do whatever he wanted to. But he submits to this whole ordeal of being bound and arrested. Like I said last week, If Judas had arrived by himself, well, it's time for you to go, he would have walked behind Judas to where they were headed. But they brought all these people with him. And let's ask the question, I asked this question earlier for a different person. What do you think, the guy who was in charge of binding Jesus, the guys who grabbed him, what do you think that was the biggest mistake they ever made in their life? You're not going to believe what I did. I physically grabbed God and tied him up. It's a puzzling thing to think about. There's all kinds of people in the story who do the worst thing they could ever do in their whole life. Jesus submitted to criminal type treatments so he could free us to serve him unrestrained today. Consider for a moment that Jesus, God in the flesh, was grabbed like a criminal and bound. What a humiliating moment for humanity. First they led him to Annas, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Verse 13. The New Testament and Josephus provides us with ample background to better understand the Sanhedrin leadership in Jerusalem and the nature and power of its presence. Annas was appointed high priest by Cyrenius in 6 AD. Cyrenius was running the show when Jesus was born. He appointed Annas the high priest, and he remained the high priest until 15 AD. And then the guy that came after Cyrenius kicked him out. The high priest in those days was a political position. They were appointed because they had connections. And Annas was one of those people. He was kicked out by Pilate's predecessor, a guy named Valerius Gratus. Yet he was the power behind the high priests for a long time. So Annas is part of the story because he really is a significant player in the big story. You could ask Annas, what's the worst thing you ever did? I orchestrated, I was behind all this evil nonsense towards Jesus. He would tell you that today. He had 5 sons, a son-in-law, and a grandson, all of whom served as high priest. So when he got deposed, his son, Caiaphas, became, well, there was a little bit of 3-year link in there where someone else was in charge. But eventually his sons took charge and they all became high priests. Caiaphas is the high priest in our story. And he kind of personally saw to it that he got picked next. This was going on right here. But because of Annas' position, he was like the power broker in the back room, kind of manipulating everything. That's why he's part of the story, a big part of it in John's minds. William Henderson in his commentary said he was the dominant member of the Jewish hierarchical machine in the temple. That term, machine, just kind of disturbs me a little bit. But that's what it was. Annas was proud, ambitious, wealthy, and history records that his family's wealth was generated from the temple merchants, the businesses, especially the sacrificial animals that were sold in the court of the Gentiles. So Jesus was somebody who disturbed all that stuff. When he came into the city during the triumphal entry, what did Jesus do? Hey, you guys, out of here. This is the house of prayer. He kicked all those people out. Threw over the money tables. And Annas is in the background going, we got to get rid of this guy. Now what we know about Caiaphas is that he was exactly like his father-in-law. An ambitious, arrogant, wealthy man who made his money selling animals in the temple to people coming to the Passover. The Talmud, a Jewish document, states these words, woe to the family of Annas for all of their wealth gathering at our expense. So even Jewish people, these people irritate me. I don't like them. They just run things wrong. That's his character in the story. Caiaphas remained the high priest until 36 AD. As a matter of fact, he was the longest serving high priest in that whole era. So he was a well-known guy. It was this man who we learned from John in John chapter 11, verse 49 to 52. Listen to what he says. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is better. Do you not understand that it's better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish?" So he actually prophesies to a bunch of people. This man, Jesus, he's thinking about it. This man, you can picture Annas talking with his son-in-law about this whole situation in the background. He says these words: that one person died for all the people, rather than all the people perish. There's evil going on in the background right here. Out of control men, acting in accordance with their nature, but with God's perfect plans. God's hand in the story of Jesus should encourage us that God's hand is in every story of God's people. I'm always encouraged by that. Nothing. God's not surprised by anything. He doesn't go, "Oh, I had no idea." Those thoughts never cross God's mind. He's always in charge. He always knows what's going to happen, and he knows exactly what needs to happen next. Let's go down to verse 19 to 24. The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Annas questioned Jesus, the man who cleansed the temple of evil usury and profit-making that made Annas and his family so wealthy. Annas must have been looking forward to this moment. We don't have a record of what he asked Jesus. John doesn't even tell us. Jesus says to him, I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in the synagogues and the temple where all Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me that I said to them. They know what I said. In Jewish law, the high priest was supposed to bring charges, not ask questions. Annas is not the high priest technically. He's the power behind the figurehead, Caiaphas. And Caiaphas was his own man, but they collaborated on the death of Jesus. Annas was simply asking questions to expose a possible crime to help his son-in-law along. Jesus does not walk into that trap, and his response speaks for itself. In some sense, Jesus accuses Annas of a secret agenda. Jesus said, I have spoken openly. Just ask people what I've said. You know the answer to all these questions. By the way, is that how you conduct business? No, that's what he's saying. Everyone knows that you do things in secret, behind closed doors. Annas is a conniving, manipulative, devious man whose son-in-law, let's say in John chapter 11, someone has to die for all the people. Let's make it him. Little did he know how true those words would become. In verse 19, we learn that Annas questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Whatever he asked, Jesus' response must have set him back. Jesus is simply calling Annas out and challenging him to present his charges. For his efforts, he gets struck in the mouth. Well, that's a pretty, think about the guy who did it. Ask yourself the question. Let's just ponder for a moment. He's sitting in the front row. What's the worst thing you ever did in your whole life? I hit God in the face. What a mess that would be. I struck Jesus during his trial. I was the first person to do something foolish and stupid. I wish I had never done that. Was Jesus being disrespectful? Is an interesting question. First, it was illegal to strike a prisoner who had been charged or accused of a crime. It was illegal. Peter later wrote these words. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly. Someone smacks me in the mouth. I'm thinking about doing something really bad to them. Jesus was then sent to Caiaphas because only the high He had been in the temple teaching every day of the week up to this moment. And I almost guess that Annas was standing in the crowd somewhere, or he had his minions doing it for him. He had healed hundreds of people, fed thousands more, and done countless miracles that Pharisees, Sadducees, and others of their group would have seen. They knew what was going on. They knew Jesus' ministry. There was nothing in private. Nicodemus knew the works and words of Jesus. He said so in John 3. We know that what you're doing is from God. Jesus said, if you won't hear my words, certainly you can observe my works. The power of God has been on display in my labors amongst you for the past 3 years in John 10:10. If you don't listen to my words, at least see what I'm doing. Jesus' response to Annas is spot on, and this trial was a ruse. Everyone knew it. Here's a takeaway for me. What is the long-term benefit? Is there any long-term benefit of being smacked around by people who want to get rid of you? In my mind, it goes immediately to the martyrs. The story of the martyrs is an illustration of the power of Christ's example for those who have been unjustly arrested, wrongfully accused, and sent to their deaths illegally. They all lost their lives, as did Jesus. But their stories are part of Christian history, and they inspire many to follow Jesus and live for Christ in challenging settings. Following Jesus can mean death. Jesus says, come and die. Come and die. And that could mean physical death at the hands of evil captors and injustice. Jesus told his disciples, greater love has no man this, that a man lay down his life for his friend. And then Jesus laid down his life. That surrender may be your life, but more likely it will be a call to serve Jesus in ways that others might think is a waste of a good mind or a foolish decision for someone so talented. Are we willing to lay down our desires and pick up his for our lives, to walk in humility when our place in life says otherwise? Anything less might be a slap in the face to God. Let's move on. Peter's first denial. Go back to verse 15. Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Since that disciple was known to the high priest, he entered with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter stood outside the door. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the servant girl who kept watching the door and brought Peter in. The servant girl at the door said to Peter, you also are not one of this man's disciples, are you? He said, I am not. Peter follows along with another disciple, and these two disciples ran away from the garden, but they didn't stay a long ways away. They knew where they were taking him, and they went there. They followed at a safe distance and got into the area called the court of the high priest. Peter is not so easily run off in some cowardly fashion, as so he returns with another disciple. Let's talk about that for a moment. In John's gospel, he uses a very similar phrase in chapter 20. Look over in chapter 20 just for a moment. Find verse 2. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, and the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb. We do not know where they have laid him. So Peter went out with the other disciple, and they were going toward the tomb. Both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. And stooping in to look in, he saw the linen cloths lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came following him and went into the tomb. He saw the linen clothes lying there, and the face cloth, which had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in place by itself. Then the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed. For as yet they did not understand the scriptures, that he must die, he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to their homes. The other disciple is another disciple in the previous chapter 18. I see it. And that's John's way of referring to himself. So what do we know about this guy? In John's gospel, he uses a very similar phrase that I mentioned to you, and referring to himself. One commentator says, it must be remembered that fishermen were entrepreneurs, not common laborers at the bottom of the social spectrum. So how did John have access to the high priest, to the court of the high priest? Because he just walks right in. Peter, he's stuck outside. We don't know who you are. Get out of here. According to the apocryphal gospel of Hebrews, which is not in the New Testament, John and his father, Zebedee, delivered fish to the high priest. They were fishermen from Galilee who brought fish to the high priest, probably every other day. So it's a likely possibility that that's how John knew what was going on right there. And the servant girl would have received it probably. I know who you are. You can be here if you want. So John gets inside. That's mentioned in Mark chapter 1, not that particular scenario, but just the background. So John had fairly easy access into the court of the high priest, and he soon realizes that Peter can't get in. So he goes back to the gate and says, he's with me, he can come in. So she lets him in. But then there's this problem. She's thinking, I've seen John before. Is this guy one of Jesus' followers too? So she asks him, point blank. Peter steps onto a very slippery slope. Nope, I don't know her. I don't know this man. No, I'm not him. It's interesting because she knew that John was with him. She knew that. And she probably had seen Peter with John. And Peter said, no, I'm not with him. I wonder what John thought. I wonder if John heard that response. Why Peter denied knowing Jesus is completely unknown. The night here was cool, so Peter slips out, probably won't walk right past her again, trying to avoid any more questions and wanting to warm himself up. So he goes near fire, and that was a risk as well. So let's move on to the next section. Let's first check in on this principle right here. The circumstances of life have a way of smoking us out and challenging us to face who we are without God in our lives. Peter's story at the end of John is an important place for us to take a close look at ourselves. First, to see who we are, who we really are, and second, to hear Jesus' words of reconciliation. I think that this story, the focus of it at this particular moment, is one of the reasons why John finishes his gospel with the reconciliation between Jesus and Peter. And that's an important piece for us to remember. Everybody, I don't care who you are, everybody sits in Peter's chair in their life. And not everybody knows the reconciliation of Jesus in chapter 21. Verse 25. Now Peter was standing warming himself. This is really compressed. In one gospel account, there's like an hour between the second question and the third question. There's just lots of time. People are standing around going, I think I recognize that guy. Didn't he carry the sword? Kind of whispering back and forth to each other. But it's not in the text. But I'm certain that's going on. The people standing around the fire, they were just part of the arresting crew. I think I saw that guy. Of course, everyone kind of chit-chats in the background. Nobody actually steps up. Hey, buddy, weren't you with Jesus? Until there was some voices that said, you know what, we ought to ask that guy. Let's go back to the text. Now, Simon Peter was standing, warming himself, so they said to him, this was not a single person. They said something. They said to Jesus, you also are one of his disciples, aren't you? Now he's on this really slippery slope. He's already stepped on that thing with someone by the gate, and this is probably an open air area to the sky, and fire out there, he's keeping himself warm. And he took a big risk stepping into that group right there, thinking, well, no, there's nobody here tonight who wasn't part of a wrestling party. This could be dicey. I am not. Does it say? I already said this once, isn't it enough? One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter cut off, asked. Now we can't tell, was he in the wrestling party, or did the opposite come back and say, you're not going to believe what happened, sis. This guy cut my ear off, and he put it back on. You can't even tell anything happened to me, can you? So this must have been an interesting moment. I did not see you in the garden. Did I not see you in the garden with him? Peter again denied it, and once the rooster crowed. In Mark's account, one commentator translates what Peter says in this particular word, in this particular section. Listen to what he says. The proper translation should be, go to hell for making such an accusation against me. I swear to you, I do not know this man. He pictures kind of this steam getting up, he's getting a little bit riled. And then all of a sudden, the rooster crowed. Now one commentator says, roosters have been crowing all night long. That's what they do at this hour of the day, this hour of the night. And that was the one he heard. I was with a bunch of pastors one time in Alaska, and someone said, hey, Dwayne, what are you preaching on Sunday? He says, I'm preaching on the most famous crow of a rooster that's ever been crowed. What? And it dawned on me instantly what he was doing. This particular rooster's crow was the most famous crow that's ever been crowed. The rest of them don't matter. Roosters have been crowing. But this crowing and the look of Jesus from Luke chapter 22 resulted in Peter going out and weeping. Now John doesn't record that either. Look what he says at the end right there. Peter again denied, and at once a rooster crowed. And he goes back to the story of Jesus. He's hauled off to Caiaphas. The fact that Jesus predicted this moment so accurately must have troubled Peter deeply, so much so that he leaves the courtyard and privately weeps. He must have told John about it later, and it became known to the other gospel writers as well. Because they kind of unpacked the whole thing. All the other three gospel writers say, Peter went out and wept bitterly. It was just grievous weeping on his part. Peter went from confident to broken in that awful moment, and he cowered around until John 21, when he hurries Jesus to hear forgiveness, reconciliation, and a job assignment. For God's children, there is little that we can do that sidelines us for the rest of our lives. I take great comfort in that. There is little I can do as a child of God which sidelines me for the rest of my life. God has a role for all of us in the body of Christ. Even for this character who denied Jesus 3 times, whose story is so well known. God has a place for all sinners, for all forgiven sinners to serve him in the body of Christ. Ask Peter. What would Peter say if we asked him, what was the hardest moment of your life with Christ? He might say this one. He might. Peter was grieved that he was not when he should have been when it was necessary for him to be that way. Here's something really interesting. The only other crowd that believers have is the world. We'll come back to that idea. Peter is a confident kind of a guy. He's not afraid of much. But this particular incident in his life probably left him painfully wounded by the words he chose, by the actions that played out. It probably hurt him deeply. Peter was overconfident even after Jesus said that he would deny him in John chapter 13, verse 38. Peter, with James and John, had fallen asleep in the garden where Jesus was praying. And one commentator says they were tired, but likely they thought they would be fine. And he concludes, prayerlessness is always a precursor to failure. So first of all, there is no situation I'm perfectly comfortable in. I need the power of God, the Spirit of God on me when I walk into every situation that challenges me to deny Christ. Secondly, I need to pray. I need to be in prayer about every situation. What did Jesus tell Peter? Satan wants to sift you. At that particular moment, he was falling to the sift. Third, it appears that John followed as close as Jesus as he could. Peter hung back at the world near the fire. So I take that to mean that my proximity to what's wrong and what's right really matters in my life. Now, it's not equally the same for everybody. If a person's been an alcoholic for 40 years, walking into a bar is the worst thing they could ever do. Or hanging out with people who drink all the time. That's the worst choice they could ever make. For me, I've never been drunk in my life. No one in my family ever drank. So going into a bar doesn't bother me. I don't go into them anyway. It doesn't bother me. For Peter, this being in this particular location was the wrong thing for him. For whatever reason, the circumstances he was involved in just pushed him in the wrong direction, and he stepped down a slippery slope, and off he went. So, in the story, John stays close where Jesus is, and Peter slips away to a different crowd. That's why I wrote that down. The only other crowd that believers have is the world. Here's what James Montgomery Boyce said one time on an internet post. Many legitimately, truly, honestly do follow Jesus, but they follow at a distance because they do not want to become too fanatical or lose touch with the world that surrounds them. Moreover, they think they are safe at a distance, though they are actually in greater danger. When Jesus calls a person to follow him, he calls them to follow in his footsteps. That literally means right behind him. And for me, the location matters. For Christ is the victor. He has guaranteed the victory, says Boyce. The place to be really safe, though in the midst of battle, is right next to Jesus. Unquote. The gospel is in plain view as we reflect on Judas and Peter. Neither Peter nor Judas could have done anything to get themselves out of the mess they created. Betraying the Son of God or denying Jesus 3 times. The devil sifted them. Only what Jesus did could make a difference. Jesus knew them both, but only one of them believed, and only one of them had a heart for Jesus, and only one of them repented and was reconciled in the end. Let me draw some conclusions. I have 3 of them. First one, in John 18, verses 1 through 11, when everyone else was retreating, Jesus stepped up. He started there. And that's a really important piece of the gospel. Jesus steps up. I stepped back, he stepped up. He identified himself and submitted. When Jesus was in the garden, who are you guys looking for? Jesus of Nazareth. I am. He stepped up and identified himself. In John 18, 12 to 27, Peter steps back. He denies being Jesus' disciple and will not submit. It is the nature of human beings, the nature of us. The contrast is important to see. The nature of Jesus versus the nature of Peter, along with all other men, is too great to miss. The good news is that Jesus stepped forward for Peter and for each of us. In light of the fact that Mark can't step forward, Peter couldn't step forward, and billions of other people couldn't step forward, someone who could step forward is Jesus, and he stepped forward Jesus is the proper example of how to respond when we are the objects of injustice or being railroaded by someone in authority. No human has real control of any situation in life. God is sovereign in the affairs of man. Let me just qualify that. I have control over what I'm going to say, but I don't have control over the people around me, the situation around me. That's all God's. He has control. He wants me to respond well. And that's a measure of authority. Peter did not respond well. He had control of what he could say. He chose to say the wrong thing. When we surrender to that reality, we can live a much less stressful life and live in the peace that passes all understanding. And the third thing, Peter reveals what we do when things are challenging. Listen to me as I unpack this for a moment. There are things that confront our hearts that we are called out, when we are called out, and reveal the side that we are on, the nature of our convictions, and the person we look to for answers in life. Peter is, in this mystery, thought, I betrayed Jesus. Judas, in his mystery, thought, I betrayed Jesus. The difference is subtle, but it's really important. Peter was deeply concerned that he had done something to his Lord. And Judas was deeply concerned that he had done something to Jesus. Judas was more upset about the fact that he screwed up than the fact that it was a sin against Jesus. For Judas, it was all about him. He had regret, but not repentance. He didn't humble himself before God. Though he regretted what he had done, there was no evidence that he ever repented. Peter, he had hurt someone he deeply loved. That's why he went out and just cried, broke down, and just fell apart. The point wasn't that he messed up, but that he had hurt Jesus. And I summarize it this way. Regret is self-focused, and repentance is God-focused. This isn't over with. Let's pray. Father, your grace is all sufficient. And you minister that grace to us every moment. I pray that as we visited the story and just kind of checked into some of the details, we found ourselves in there. And we come out of the story just grateful for your unbelievable grace. You have redeemed us. You have rescued us. You have reconciled us. You have restored us. And my prayer is that good news, that gospel, will rejuvenate us to live like Christ, to respond to the situations around us that are out of control and injuring us and hurting us. To be reminded that you're in control. This is all our response is the only thing we have control over. And some of us, we walk into situations and we're just like Peter. It's a slippery slope. Help us to stay away from those places. To keep them at a distance from us, just to be safe, so that we don't have to walk down this path that Peter walked down. Father, I pray that when our lives are over and someone says to us, what's the best decision you ever made? We would all say, I was with Jesus. I chose him.